Welcome to JonGetsGames. Today I'll be reviewing Dimension. In this completely multiplayer solitaire game, 1 to 4 players will be building pyramids of colored spheres, and the way you build that pyramid is constrained and guided by a set of random rules that are dealt out each turn. They might say certain colors can't touch each other, or you need more of one color than another. First I'll go over how the game plays, and then I'll jump into my review. At the beginning of the game, each player is going to get one of these trays as well as the 15 spheres in 5 different colors. In each round of the game, we're going to deal out 6 rule cards. These are drawn from a large deck of 60 total. So each of these rule cards gives you restrictions for how you're going to build a pyramid of spheres in your player area. This one right here says that the sum of the green and the blue spheres must be 4. This one says that the blue and black spheres can't touch. This says that the green and white spheres also can't touch. The black spheres must touch each other. You need less black than orange, and orange cannot be on top of any other sphere. So once all the cards are revealed, we're going to take this 1-minute sand timer, flip it over, and we all try to solve it at the same time. So let's give it a go. We know that orange needs to be on the bottom because it can't be on top of anything. So we're going to put these down, and we know that we need more orange than black. So we can only put 2 black out on the board. So maybe we put these 2 black ones over here. Now we see that we need that blue and black cannot touch each other, which is kind of a problem because we have these blacks right here. So we could maybe throw a couple whites in there, but we know that white and green can't touch. And neither can blue and black. So maybe we put a blue over there and a blue over there. Let's see here. Now we can't put a green here because that would be touching the white underneath. So we're in a bit of a problem. We don't want to put this white over here. I guess we could put the white over there, and now we could put this green on top. But unfortunately, we are not summing up to 4 with our blues and our greens, and our time is definitely running out. We don't have that much space left, so we could kind of take this down here and put the blue up there instead, and at this point we've run out of time. So now each player will take 1 point for every sphere they put into their pyramid. The maximum is 11, and that's what we did. And now we go through every one of the rules and see which ones we got right. The first one we already are losing. It says that we need our blues and our greens to sum up to 4. We didn't use any of our greens. We put 3 blues down, so we have broken that rule, and that costs us 2 points. So this 5 turns into a 3. Next up, we see that blue and black aren't touching, and that is correct, so no penalty there. Next up, green and white aren't touching. Well, we didn't put any green out, so we're fine there. The 2 blacks are touching down here, and we do have 3 oranges to the 2 black spheres, so that is fine. And lastly, we have no orange on top of anything. So we only had 1 penalty, and we were still able to get 9 points out of that round. In addition to these point tokens, we also have these bonus chips, and you only get these if you satisfy 2 conditions. The first is you use at least one of all 5 of the different colored spheres, which we did not. And the second is that you don't break any rules. Now you don't have to get 11 points, you just need to break no rules and use all the different spheres, and you get one of these bonus chips that would go into your area. And these bonus tokens are worth victory points at the end of the game. If you have none at the end of the game, you lose 6 points. If you have 6 of them, you gain 6 points. And if you have 3, you get 0, and it's kind of a sliding scale of bonus points. At the end of the round, you break your pyramid down, you put it back into your tray, and we are going to discard all of the rule cards, and we'll bring out 6 new ones. Once you have done 6 of these full turns, you count up to see who has the most victory points, and that person wins. So now it's time to review Dimension, and I'm going to begin with a couple positive points. The first of these is that I just love the puzzle of figuring out how best to navigate those rule cards that get flopped up every turn. The first thing you want to look at is which are interacting a lot and which are not. Like maybe there's a color that's not on any of these cards. In that case, you can throw all 3 of those balls out there and not really worry about it too much. Then you need to see, well, is there one that's like a summation? Like if you can only have 1 black ball, well then put 1 out there and then work from there. Maybe you need to have 4 black and white, well that means you need to have 3 white now, and you just kind of stack all of these little rules on top of each other and see where it takes you. And sometimes you can't actually build a full pyramid and follow all the rules, and that's where a big part of the challenge is. When you get most of the pyramid filled and you look over the timer and you see you have like 20 seconds left, well you need to concentrate and think, is there anything I've missed? And I just really find that mental exercise super satisfying. Positive number 2 relates to the timer, and the fact that this is a positive at all will be surprising to anyone who knows my personal tastes. I really dislike timed elements to my board games, specifically sand timers or maybe rushing to get tiles before other people. I just lock down and freeze up in my brain, and I hate the stress that that adds into a game. So I was kind of assuming I would dislike Dimension when I first heard about it, but I have had that completely flipped on its head. I really like the fact that it has a timer because I think it does it very well. Many time games want to keep you stressed and they have not enough time for you to get the thing done. But in Dimension, you have a full minute, which is usually enough time to complete your pyramid. Now, you might screw things up because you are definitely going at a diligent pace because you know that there is a timer ticking down, but if it was like a 30-second timer, I would just hate it. I would hate the game in general, but with a minute, I feel like it adds this steady pressure. You need to keep working, you need to not stall out too much, but at the end of the day, you oftentimes look over and say, okay, I got lots of time left. And many times I'll finish building my pyramid, look over and realize I've got like 15 seconds left to double check all my rules, make sure, okay, is this right? Yes. Is this right? Yes. And I like that. It adds a great amount of pressure, but it does not stress me out like so many other time games do, and that's a big pleasant surprise. So now I'll shift over into my one neutral point for Dimension, which relates to its complete multiplayer solitaire nature. There is literally nothing that you do to actually interact with your opponents while you're playing this game. You really are just putting out the rules and trying to do the best you can and hope that your best is better than your opponent's best. I mean, the most interaction you can possibly have is psychological if you're building a pyramid and it's just not coming together well and you look over and you see someone is just sitting there with like a full pyramid and they're sure they got it and you're like, how did they do it? I only have like 8 spheres down in my little board. And I guess to a certain degree that's a bit of psychological interaction, but this is a totally multiplayer solitaire game, and I think it works very well because it means the game just keeps going at a great pace and it works for the nature of the game, but you need to know that that is the way the game plays, because I know some people really dislike multiplayer solitaire, and this game is the epitome of that. So now let's discuss my one negative for the game, which relates to contradictory rules in the cards that randomly come out. You have very simple, obvious ones like a card that says all white spheres must touch, and another card that says all white spheres cannot touch. And so obviously that's a contradiction, and there's actually a variant in the rules that say you can discard that second card and reveal another one. And in fact, we did that many times as we were playing. But what we started to realize is there is kind of second and third level contradictions that sometimes require a little more thinking to realize that you cannot get everything done with that specific rule set. You might have a card that says only one black sphere can be out, another one that says only one orange sphere, and then one that says you need more black than orange. Well, okay, as you're dealing those cards out, somebody might notice that quickly and say, well, discard that card, or maybe they won't, and it's a little bit more than that first one, so at what point do you draw the line? And you might say, well, that's part of the fun of the game, is figuring out where you have these clashes and dealing with it. My issue is not only when do you discard cards and when do you not discard cards when you're relating to that variant, but if you're saying, okay, well, we're not going to use the variant, we're just going to play the game as it's supposed to be, just throw all the cards out there, that you oftentimes have less interesting turns when you have those contradictions. If you have all white spheres must touch and all white spheres can't, you effectively have 4 interesting rules for that setup of the game, because at that point, well, okay, you can't satisfy both, so you kind of go with one, and it's not as interesting. And that's essentially my issue with the clashing cards. I'm not sure how best to get around that. I think at this point we are just drawing and throwing all the cards out and just dealing with it. And fortunately the rounds are only a minute long, so if you have a dull round, it's not the end of the world, but it's definitely something that has brought the game down a bit for me. Alright, now let's discuss the replayability of Dimension. And this really centers around those rule cards that you deal out. There are 60 of them in the game, and you only use 36 in a given play of the game. So that's a bunch of cards that are not going to be in each play. However, there are a lot of duplicate cards in here that just relate to different colors. In fact, there is essentially 12-ish kinds of cards in that deck. You just have the one that says only one black sphere and one blue sphere and one white sphere. Well, that is going to take up a whole bunch of cards. So what I've noticed playing the game several times is that 2 or 3 games in, you're definitely feeling like you're not seeing anything new. You've kind of seen a lot of the different interactions, and there is a learning process to this game where the first game you're playing, you're kind of figuring out a lot of the little tricks, like when you see that this card says you need 1 of this and another one is a sum, okay, well that means you need 3 of this other one, and then how does that relate to this? You're kind of building all these little building blocks, and then once you get like 2 or 3 games in, you start to recognize patterns. You say, okay, this means this, and this means that, and I think that means that the replayability of the game is going to be okay, like very average going forward. Fortunately, it's a very quick game, so as a filler type game, it will see a lot of play. Even once I might feel like I've kind of solved it and I've seen everything that the game has ever shown me, I'll probably still enjoy playing it, but I think that the replayability is not exceptional, and I don't know, I hope that maybe in the future they can come out with different variety of cards to mix things up. I'm not sure exactly what they would do, but I think it's prime for it. So now let's discuss Dimension's different player counts. It plays 1 to 4 players, and it pretty much plays exactly the same for all of those different player counts. I've not played a 1-player game, but I know that in a 1-player game you're playing the mechanically identical game to all the other sets. So essentially what I can say is it plays great at all of those player counts, but I probably personally prefer 4 players because, I don't know, it's just more people that you are trying to beat out in figuring out the different logic puzzles. And the fact that the game is completely multiplayer solitaire and also completely simultaneous means that it won't be slower from one with a 2-player game versus a 4-player game, really. And so I figure having more friends around the table to play this game against is slightly better, but realistically, it's the same across all player counts. In conclusion, I've really enjoyed this game, and that definitely surprised me because pretty much as a rule, I dislike timers in any kind of board game. It's just a thing that clashes with my brain. I lock down, I get stressed out, I don't like it. And so I actually wrote this game off entirely when I first heard about it. A few friends of mine played it at Board Game Geek Con last year. I saw them playing it and I said, have fun, I'm gonna do this over here. I see a sand timer, I want nothing to do with that. But what I realized once I started playing the game is that that is okay if it has a well-defined structure of logical steps that you go through, and the fact that the sand timer is 1 minute long, which seems like a very reasonable amount of time to complete the structure that you're trying to make. Now, sometimes you will run out of time and you're like, there's too many interactions. But the fact that many times, in fact, I'd say well over half of the turns that you play, you will decide that you've done the best you can before that timer runs out, makes it just a really nice incentivizer that is kind of pushing you, making sure you are thinking steadily and not dilly-dallying too much. And it's also great if you're playing the game with people who might suffer from analysis paralysis a little bit because, well, it's always going to be 1 minute per round. And when not just talking about the timer, talking about the game itself, as I mentioned before, I just love the puzzle of figuring it out how to work these cards together. It almost feels like a Sudoku puzzle or maybe various iPhone apps where you have this big board and you're trying to figure out how to navigate it, and you say, well, which point can I know for certainty to work from? Like, you look around here and you say, okay, there are no laws that have anything to do with the white spheres, so we can just throw those out with impunity. Or you might say, okay, there's that one that says there needs to be 1 blue ball. Let's just start with that. Oh, blue balls can't be on top of anything else. Okay, that's going to need to be at the top of the pyramid. And you work from there, and you work into all those other ones that might seem difficult, like, oh, you need to have more black spheres than white spheres. Well, you'll get there later. Do the other things that relate to the count better, and then decide how you're going to be throwing those things down. So I've really been impressed with this game. I played it back-to-back a couple times already. I can see myself playing it a whole bunch more times, even though, as I said in the replayability section, it is kind of average. I don't think it has exceptional replayability, but just the fact that it is so much fun and it takes like no more than 10 minutes to play means that I can see this game hitting the table quite often. If you'd like to see more in-depth board game reviews like this one, as well as full game playthroughs and vlogs, please subscribe to my channel. You can also directly support the channel at patreon.com/JonGetsGames. Thanks for watching.